world. I'm Hayley Solich, I'm your host, and this is the Gold Digger Podcast, where we're digging the dirt and finding the gold in people's lives. Grab a cuppa, sit back, relax, and enjoy the show. Before we start digging for gold, I just want to acknowledge that I'm broadcasting from Wajak Noongar Budja here in sunny Perth and pay my respects to the traditional custodians of this land, both past and present. As you know, this podcast is about unearthing the wisdom from ordinary people's lives. How do people overcome challenges? What motivates them to serve the community? And what inspires them to keep moving forward after personal life challenges? But before we get down and dirty with Leanne and start digging around in her life, I want to share with you a quote. And this is a thought from Martin Luther King, who said, "Our lives begin to end the day we become silent about things that matter." And I'll read that again. Our lives begin to end the day we become silent about things that matter. You see, some people speak up and others shut up. I have two children, just to give you a little story about that. I have two children with anxiety and they both handle their anxiety differently. One externalizes it and the other internalizes it. So one of my children is very vocal when they're feeling anxious and the other one goes very, very quiet. And so we see that some people speak up and other people shut up. And it took me a long time in my life to find my voice. And some of you probably wish that I hadn't found my voice. I wouldn't be here today if I hadn't found that voice. And you know, once I found the courage to call out things around me, to look with curiosity at systems and at decisions, it helped me immensely to feel powerful in my own life, because I didn't then have to accept everything that happened to me like I was a victim of life. I was actually a participant. And I had a voice and I was able to use that voice to enact change in the way that I was being treated, change in the way that others were experiencing things. And that really helped me to feel powerful. And it gave me an opportunity to influence change in our community. And one person that I've met while I've been on that change journey is the lady that I'm going to be interviewing today. And I've had the wonderful privilege of working with her on this journey of influencing the decision makers in Australia. Leanne Beagley is the CEO of Mental Health Australia. I've observed Leanne's courage in speaking boldly to the issues that are critically important for the well-being of the most vulnerable in our communities. And let me tell you, she's not backward in coming forward, but she uses her words with such grace and impact. And so I'm very honoured to have her here today. I admire her drive, her commitment to take others on the journey with her. She's a mother, a widow, a change maker in the mental health space who's leading the conversations around mental health reform. And Leanne is courageously pushing the agenda for reform in Australia, and that's a big job. So I really, hats off to you, Leanne. Welcome today to the Gold Digger Podcast, and I'm really very privileged to have you here.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. I feel like I should be interviewing you. I want to know more. I'm coming to you from Ngunnawal land in Canberra.
Awesome. Yeah. Well, we could probably chew the fat here for a few hours, Indeed. But we've only got a very short half an hour show today. But perhaps we can do another session and you can interview me later. That might be fun, actually. So I'm just going to ask you a series of questions. And the first one is just a getting to know you type of question. If you could pick an animal that best sort of describes your character, which animal would you pick, Leanne, and why?
Oh, that's a really hard one. So my favourite animal in the world is a chicken. Weirdly, chicken. And it's a chicken because I just think they're the funniest, weirdest birds, right?
Yeah.
Like they're just chicken. And I just spend the whole day pecking around looking for stuff. I also love meerkats because they're never on their own. and they're always poking their head up and looking around to see what they can learn. And both of those things, are aspects of my character, I reckon. I think that's why I like them so much.
Oh, I don't think I'll ever be able to look at you straight without giggling from now on, thinking of the chook, pecking out there, pecking at everybody. Come on, get into line. Come on, you mental health leaders in Australia. No, awesome. It's a great animal. Just so you don't feel alone, I'm going to share an animal today. I usually say the horse because that's really my closest animal that aligns to me. But today I'm feeling like the frog. Frogs are happy, energetic. They're quite vocal, well-liked, and they're adaptive to their environments. People accept that they're not the most attractive, but they like them anyway. And they love to swim and lay around the pond or camouflage themselves on the bark of a tree to avoid their predators. And I think that the ability to camouflage yourself from your predators in the mental health space is actually probably a pretty good one to have. And if only
good skill to have.
It's a good skill to have, I think, to go under the radar a little bit at times. And if only I could find a tree as a mental health advocate that I could camouflage against sometimes would be helpful, I think. Anyway, enough about me. We want to focus on you today, Leanne. So I'm going to get into the diggy type questions now. I know you've had some personal life challenges, and I'm keen for us all to talk about some of these challenges today because people often see people operating at your level, but they don't recognise that leaders are ordinary people who also experience challenges. So can you tell us a little bit about who is Leanne and how did the Leanne who lived in Melbourne with the family become the Leanne who now lives in the power capital of Australia and leading a national organisation and pretty much living on your own now?
Yeah, I do. So I moved to Canberra from Melbourne at the beginning of COVID, March 2020. And I've been here for that whole time. I left in Melbourne 3 adult children and my parents and my entire tribe of supporters and friends and family, and moved to, because I was so keen to take up the role at Mental Health Australia as the CEO and have the opportunity that provided to advocate in areas that have been annoying me for a very long time. And I wanted to act on being really frustrated and annoyed, and I felt like that was another way that I could try after all the other ways I'd tried. And so at the same time, it was about a year when I was offered the role. It was about a year after my husband had died, and he died after 35 years together. He died of bowel cancer or complications from bowel cancer that we didn't know he had. So from the time that he was diagnosed to the time he died was only 9 weeks.
Wow, yeah.
And he was in full-time work and, at the top of his own career as a senior priest in the Anglican Church and in Melbourne. And so we were kind of in shock and distress,
yeah,
I
horrendous.
guess is what I could say. After spending a time that first initial year grieving, it seemed to me that I was going to grieve forever, and that's the truth. Yeah. And that I was going to be a kind of sad grieving mess, whether I was in Melbourne or Canberra or Timbuktu, quite frankly. Yeah. And I needed to keep moving, otherwise I would never have got out of bed. If I hadn't have had a role, and at that time I was the CEO of one of the primary health networks in Victoria, and if I had not have had a role that I loved and a team that I felt responsible to and for, I wouldn't have got out of bed. Yeah. So in some ways, the employment kind of context really helped me to keep walking, just keep putting one foot in front of the other. And when I made the decision to come to Canberra, it was to take up that, professionally to take up that role, but also to interrupt this kind of dead space that I was feeling in my grief. I don't think people who are listening and are grieving will know exactly what this is like. It's never stops, and it kind of catches you in unexpected ways. And I know that as I talk about it today, I will cry because it's just part of who I am.
Yeah.
But I also had to keep going. I had to keep going for my kids, and I had to keep going for me. And so I moved up. The only tricky bit was bloody pandemic. Excuse me for swearing. But what I think I had in my mind that I'd be able to pop back to Melbourne to kind of refill my tank with my tribe. But because of the long Melbourne lockdowns, I could never do that. And so I found myself having to navigate a new city with no friends and no social sort of context and no tribe, and this really quite challenging but exciting new work. So, yes, that's what got me to Canberra.
Amazing. Look, first acknowledging that you lost the partner of your life and such a huge gap that would have left in your life, and I'm so sorry for you and the family, Leanne, and such a short time to actually get your head around that before he was gone. Yeah. Really challenging. And I love that grief, I'm a board member of the Grief Centre of WA, and part of the reason I'm in doing that work is because grief is such a real part of who we are. Everybody at some point in their life will lose something. And we, as a community, we have to come to understand how we work with grief and how we allow it to be a traveller that passes in and through our lives. And so I can understand your thinking around how can I transition in this cycle, because grief can be with you for a lifetime. I lost a mum and two grandmothers in 1 year, and it took me a very long time to sort of really process that grief through my life. I met you at the start of that challenge when you came to Canberra and started work with the National Mental Health Consumer and Carer Forum, and I've certainly seen your strength and courage under fire in those first 6 months of getting your feet on the ground and finding yourself in this new environment. But I see the strength that's developed in and through you in that time and the transition that you've made. It's been really beautiful to see you at work and to hear. I can hear the strength that's come through you as you've taken on this challenge and have risen to the challenge, Leanne. So I want to congratulate you on that, finding that strength and navigating that challenge. COVID interrupted everything for everybody everywhere. It changed us forever.
It did.
That in itself was a trauma. Just getting through COVID. So kudos to you for managing and navigating that family challenges as well of separation. I want to ask the question, what has been the greatest benefit? Because we've heard about the transition and the challenges, but what's been the greatest benefits for you personally in taking up this challenge?
I think that there's two sets of benefits when I think about this. One is the benefits that come from grappling with an important role and working with a team and kind of moving things forward. It's been a privilege to be the CEO at Mental Health Australia. It's been, I work with amazing people, all of whom are passionate about something and wanting to kind of take it forward. And this role has given me such an opportunity to connect with important people and decision makers and have a chance to say some things that other people, I get to tables that other people don't get to. And so in order for me to get to use the time when I get there, I need to know what people are thinking and feeling, and then to understand so that when I'm speaking on behalf of all the people who are behind and who have equipped me to say what needs to be said. So I'm not there or speaking about what I think. I'm speaking about what the sector and the people think, and that means doing a lot of listening and a lot of understanding. I guess the other thing that's been just really important to acknowledge, just having spoken about the personal challenges of moving up here and being really isolated, is that I had to systematically work out how to do it. I had to work out how to live somewhere on my own, and I had to learn how to make connections with people. And after having been living in a busy family vicarage, because my husband was a priest, so there were people coming to the door constantly, and I had 3 kids, and it was a busy family life. To be utterly alone meant I had to really think about how to survive that space. And so I took on some study, and I took on some volunteer work, and I spent some time with people in the community up here, and I got to make Canberra my city.
Awesome.
And I used to go every Saturday. I'd go to somewhere new. You know, like, you're never a tourist in your own town, right? Well, I turned into a tourist in my own town, and I went somewhere different every time. And Canberra's got all this awesome stuff to visit. So I just systematically got to know the city. And I suppose I've done that with the job too. I've systematically got to know what are the issues, where are the pain points, and what can we do about them. It's not just about talking about the problem and admiring the problem that we have. It's about thinking cleverly about what we can do.
Yes.
And what changes we can make.
Yes, for those listening that don't understand the mental health space, Mental Health Australia is an Australian association that has many members across consumers and carers and professional bodies and organisations. So it's quite a diverse membership that you are responsible for and speak on behalf of, Leanne. And also, just to explain, Leanne gets to meet with ministers to influence change at that very high level in Australia. So when she's talking about sitting at tables, that's what she's referring to, that she has that opportunity to speak into the funding and the projects that may come down the pipeline to the local level. And it is really challenging work. And one of the things that, just so that you understand the context, one of the things that Leanne is responsible for is her organisation is the auspicing body for the National Mental Health Consumer and Carer Forum, which is a group of consumers and carers who are advocating for change and can be quite challenging and demanding as a group, a professional group. And so Mental Health Australia has these complexities in the different programs that it manages. It also has the Embrace Project, which is people from culturally and linguistically diverse backgrounds, which is a large group of representatives of a different variety. So there are quite a few challenging projects on your plate. But I love that you went, I'm a solo woman in a new city. I have to do something to connect myself to the city and to connect myself to the people in the city. And that's so proactive to go, okay, I'm going to get out and see what there is. I'm going to meet people and I'm going to not sit in a corner and just live work, because that you could easily have probably done that work 7 days a week.
It would have been easier to be doing that, really, because it is hard, and I'm a very shy person. So it's Hayley will be surprised I said that, but frankly, I'm a very shy person, and I don't like to walk into a party first or anything like that. And I'm basically pretty anxious about new situations. So it was. So what have I learned? I've learned that I can do it on my own, and that it's. And I never knew that about myself. I never knew that I could do it on my own, and it's been amazing for that reason.
We're going to just pause there for a few moments and have a break, and then we'll come back and we'll dig some more dirt with Leanne.
It's calling someone help me to find me. I just can't find who I need to be. Just can't get moving with missing pieces of my soul. Nothing feels like it used to anymore. So many people want a piece of me. I'm drowning, and they see. Just can't get moving with missing pieces of my soul. Nothing feels like it used to anymore. So many people want a piece of me. I'm drowning, and they see. Just can't get moving with missing pieces of my soul. Nothing feels like it used to anymore. So many people want a piece of me. I'm drowning, and they see. Just can't get moving with missing pieces of my soul. Nothing feels like it used to anymore. So many people want a piece of me. I'm drowning, and they
You're listening to the Gold Digger podcast, and I'm Hayley Solich, digging the dirt with Leanne Beagley, CEO of Mental Health Australia. And we've been talking about Leanne's job as CEO and her transition from Melbourne, where she was surrounded by community and friends, to going solo in Canberra, the power capital. Working in the mental health field, I know, can be very complex, Leanne, and we've talked about some of those complexities in terms of your job role. And also you've mentioned that, you know, there's a lot of complexity around what to do as well. So there's no simple solutions. It's a system that's all counterbalanced. So if you pull one thing, it's like a whole house of cards that's going to fall down. You have to be very careful and strategic, which is what you were talking about earlier, in how you go about solving some of the issues that we have. And so consequently, change happens at an extremely slow pace in this field. However, there have been some exciting movement recently. Do you want to talk a little bit about sort of what the challenges are in terms of working in the space to be a change creator?
Sure. So I guess what we get to do, and this has been the kind of real privilege in being at Mental Health Australia, is that we've got a whole of system view. And what I mean by that is that, there's specific things you could do in aged care around mental health, or there's specific things you could do with primary school age children, and there's specific things you can do with people who are homeless, or people in prison, or people who are in Indigenous and First Nation communities, and all of those things matter. What Mental Health Australia has been focusing on is one level up from that, which is what are some of the settings that we need in this country? What are some of the systems and settings that we need that will help us get to the right thing for children and for First Nations people and for LGBTIQ plus communities and for older people, as in for the whole community? What are the settings that we need? And that's where my interest is in. And that has always been starting with, well, what do the people in those areas who want help actually want? What do they find helpful? What do they want? And that includes, what do children most need? And what do the children, not the parents, what do the children think they need? Or what do people in aged care facilities say about their mental health and what they need? So I guess we've been very interested in arguing for system change that involves making sure that everywhere you look, people living with the problems get to influence the solutions. And that's the first thing. The second thing is that nowhere does anyone think that going to hospital is the best solution forever. Sometimes going to hospital, and especially when I was sick with when I was getting a knee replaced, for example, of course I needed to go to hospital. Sometimes it's really important. But to be honest, having services and support in your own home with your own tribe around you is way more useful, apparently, according to people who tell us about what's helpful. Community-based services are more helpful than being in hospital. So our advocacy is about saying to governments, yes, you might want to build some more beds, but really what we want to see is investment back upstream. We want to see people, when they first start to feel unwell or when they're first needing to have some help, to get help with in the community with that and with the other things that impact on them, like jobs and housing and family support. So, for us, it's about lifting it up to another level. So we've also been pretty cross with the government about not being transparent and not telling us where their investment is going and where it's and whether it's hitting the spot and whether what they say they wanted to do is actually what they did. And some of those things really, they're broad issues for government, but we think if it's taxpayers' money, then taxpayers need to know what's happened to it. And unfortunately, the investment in mental health probably hasn't been as good in that sort of collecting data like it has been in regular health services and hospitals. So we'd like to see much more of that. Now you've got me on a rant. Sorry.
No, it's a good rant. It's a good rant. I support you 100%. And I think what you're talking about realistically is prevention intervention rather than trying to get right down the end and treat. Because
Absolutely.
if we can prevent it in the first place, then we don't ever have to get to treat. And if we can intervene, we don't have to get to treat. And so the investment in prevention and intervention just makes so much sense in my head. And certainly looking at how people are as whole people instead of dicing them up into segments of brain and body and other, looking at that person as a whole being, it seems a lot more sensible to me. If I think of different times in our journey as a family that had, significant trauma over a long period, that trauma could have been greatly reduced by things like housing or, financial support or just practical support, to be honest. I was a parent overrun with 4 kids and a husband who was disabled at that time, and extremely difficult to do work, kids, husband, and the types of complexity that there was in the children. We had medical issues, we had mental health issues, we had behavioural issues. It was very difficult to manage. So interventions would have been helpful. And I often do wonder myself, just a bit of self-disclosure here, I wonder at which point in my life am I actually going to stop and look back? Because that's when I get to fall over. I don't get to fall over yet because I'm still a carer, still in it. Yes. But when maybe I won't do. Maybe I'm just being gifted with resilience for this lifetime, for this purpose, to push forward and keep the family going. And probably there's 1,000 mothers and grandmothers out there that have done that for their families through the generations. I often think about the pioneering women, Leanne, and, you're going to Canberra solo and those women that came out and made Australia what it is today. Yep. Who were left at home alone while the husbands went off to do their jackarooing tasks. We are the backbone of Australia, us women, just to get on a rant of a different variety. But it does take resilience. It does take self-awareness, which is what you've been talking about today, about you understanding your grief journey, you understanding what you need now to be resilient, to be able to rise to the challenge in the workplace. And what the community needs, and what you're talking about is this integrated view of how to put services together. It's this integrated view of keeping people centred.
Can I jump
Asking
in
the
about
question.
something, Hayley? Because, one of the things that is a trap. One of the things that is a trap is trying to simmer things down to one or two kind of quick media grabs, almost like, I hate this term, but a silver bullet, that there's a silver bullet that's going to fix the problem. I don't like the term because it's about guns, but it does help everyone understand that sometimes people want what look like very easy, simple solutions. Like, let's just get some more psychologists and then we won't have long wait lists. It doesn't work like that. And also psychologists aren't the only people who can provide care. In fact, people who've lived with their own challenges provide enormously helpful mentoring and support and peer engagement and strength. So this kind of idea, let's just get some more psychologists, is not going to work. Love psychologists, that's not my issue. But it's like people go to and you understand it. Why can't you just get them? Why can't we just make things happen? And the reality is that it's not always the right answer, that the silver bullet type answer is not always the right one, because it's a complex environment. It's not straightforward.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I think that's the word complex. Mental health is complex.
Yeah.
And because I was thinking as you were saying that, one solution is more medical model people, more beds, more hospitals, more people who have qualifications in the medical approach to whatever might be ailing your mental health. But the whole other side of that is, how about we teach our communities how to be resilient? How about we teach them how to process grief and trauma, so that when they hit these life barriers, I call them barriers, when you hit the girlfriend leaving you, when you hit the workplace bullying you, when you hit the partner doing the wrong thing by you, you don't end up deeply traumatized by the experience. You actually go, okay, I can see this. I'm self-aware. I can see this for what it is. I can recognize my part, their part, take ownership of my part. I can process what's going on for me because I have an awareness and an understanding of the life and how life works. I don't think we teach people enough in their younger years about how to harvest wisdom, how to recognize the situations and circumstances. It's that emotional intelligence that's missing from our communities, and definitely increased now. We've gone to media, social media, and making it our main ways of connecting. I think that's what's really, really missing from our communities, because when you have that self-awareness, you're then able to reduce down so many things. It reduces down anger and disappointment and the grief cycles. You're able to get through those living life with people stuff. I call it stuff.
What I think is really important too is recognising and building informal supports in the community. So informal supports and connections, so that you don't feel. So people have somewhere to process that, even, so that it's, we do need to teach children and teenagers how to tolerate not being the top, not winning.
Yes.
Or how to hear no and how to tolerate hearing the word no, and those sorts of things. So those are all really important things that are still for us to learn how to do carefully. But in the end, sometimes you just have a really bad time, and it is really distressing. And what I learned from my grief was that the people I most wanted to be with were the ones that didn't try and solve it. So they couldn't anyway, right? But they wouldn't say, oh, well, he's better off now, he's not in pain. Shut up. That's ridiculous. He's not better off. Do you know what I mean? It was just like when people just sat with me and said, I'm so sorry, and let me cry, that was always more useful, actually, than any of the things that people tried to say to move me forward. I didn't want to move forward. I wanted to be in my sadness and my grief, and I still do. So I think when we get into this situation where we try to have highfalutin responses, when really what we want is, local connections and local, we're very excited at Mental Health Australia because we're releasing a report next week in Melbourne, and I'm not sure when you're loading up your podcast, but World Mental Health Day is on the 10th of October, and we're releasing a report to the nation, which we've done with Ipsos about people's mental health and wellbeing. And one of the things that we're really interested in is the fact that the Aboriginal people that we spoke to really have very strong community connections and bonding, much more than any other groupings, and
Yes.
And how important that is for resilience and well-being and belonging and culture connections. And I think that's not as evident in the white community or and it's evident in different ways in the CALD community. So I guess what I'm starting to think is that we've all got to do more about supporting connections between people in the communities that are informal connections, but it's where relationships are built and strength is built. And I found that moving to Canberra, and I'm sure that it's part of, people connect around their families at school, for example. That's
Yes.
a kind of autopilot grouping that families have. But what if you don't have a family, or what if your family's grown up and moved away? How do you create connections? It's one of the things that I think we really need to grapple with as a community.
Oh, 100% agree. That's why I started Women Can International. When I separated from my husband many years ago, I recognised I needed women around me. And so I intentionally did that. And one of the hallmarks of Women Can has always been that connecting women. It's like a PowerPoint, plug them in and just watch the magic happen. And I think connection coming out of COVID, and I have said this many times on social media, we have to become intentional about creating opportunities for connection in the community to reconnect us post-COVID. I think that's a program, programs that do connection should be funded from governments to help to resource that connection opportunity, because without connection, people need to feel like they belong. It's one of the core things that we have that drive us as human beings is a sense of belonging. And without that, we are going to experience mental health challenges. So definitely good.
And we do we do see that with men in particular. So you've spoken about women and the importance of connection, but there's some very isolated men, and we're thinking that that's one of the real challenges in suicide prevention. There's much higher rates of suicide in men, and we think that's because that's a piece of work we really need to build, the connection between blokes. So
come on, fellas.
Yeah.
Come on, fellas. There's an invitation, Mental Health Australia. They've got a fabulous chairperson at Mental Health Australia, a young male that's very mindful of these things.
Yes,
so if you're a male out there and you want to get something started, perhaps you can get in touch with Leanne and have a conversation around how that might happen. I think it's, vitally important. Men are as important as women, obviously, to the strength of our community, and we do want to see our men strong in the right ways to be able to be part of the fabric of who we are as a community. As we close off, one last question. I was going to ask you a series of questions around getting to know you things, but I think we've sort of had a really good conversation. What's next for you? Where to in this journey? Where to from here?
Oh, well, we're hitting our straps at Mental Health Australia we're very excited to have had some really great conversations with the new government, and that the new government is seeking to look at some of the areas we also think need some attention, and that is like First Nations equality and jobs and skills and access for people to employment, lots of issues around cost of living and climate change and all the things that worry people. And so we feel like there's some really great conversations that we can be having now about mental health and wellbeing, as well as mental illness and treatment and those things which we know need some incremental development and some long-term change. But now we feel optimistic about the conversations that we're getting to have, and the most important of those is building an infrastructure to support people with lived experience having a real voice and leadership in the design of our systems and the evaluation of our work. So that's very exciting. That's the next steps to Mental Health Australia. It's very exciting.
Fantastic. No, look, I wish you really well with that challenge too, because I think there's so much opportunity starting to arise, certainly over here in the West, in terms of people with lived experience, opportunities to really drive forward change.
Yes.
So it's lovely to know that that's going to be, at a higher level, looking at how leadership could be effective in Australia.
Yep.
Look, it's just been awesome talking with you, Leanne. Where can people see the videos? Perhaps that's an important thing, since we talked about you've got a video
we've got a couple
awareness campaign.
Yeah, we have. We've started that. There's our first video is called Walk the Talk, and it's on the front of our web. It's the first thing you come to the web page, so mentalhealthaustralia.org on the web, and you can find our first video and next week we'll release our second one, which is around this new report to the nation that we've done. So feel free to have a look at those and send us feedback as you go along. We're always interested in whether we've completely missed the point or have hit the nail on the head. Always keen to have feedback.
Fantastic. So I'd encourage you, hop over to the website, that's mentalhealthaustralia.org, and check out the videos on this new mental health campaign. There's also other information on the website. There's a lot of stuff on the website that's valuable and resource-wise. And you can also check out the National Mental Health Consumer and Carer Forum Australia website. That's nmhccf.org.au. Might as well go and check out what they're up to as well if you're interested in mental health advocacy. Thank you, Leanne. You are awesome.
Thank you, Hayley. Thank you for your leadership and your interest in getting some voices and some real people out there. It's lovely to have had this opportunity. Thank you.
Thank you. And I know that it's going to mean a lot to people, especially those that are going through grief process. You said all the things that I hear regularly. We have to learn how to sit with other people and hold them in their grief without trying to fix them. I think that's a very important part of being a community and learning to grieve together. So I wish you well on that grief journey too.
Thank you, Hayley. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Yeah. Take care. Thank you so much.
See you later. Bye.
Thanks, everybody. You've been listening to the Gold Digger podcast. I'm Hayley Solich, your host, and I'll see you in the next episode.